Hello and welcome to Mytech Partners May edition of our monthly discussion. Today we are going to spend time with Ken Dang, the product manager of SonicWALL, now Dell Continuous Data Protection, which is their backup and disaster recovery product. I've had the privilege of working with Ken over the last several years through the different iterations that CDP and the ongoing development that CDP has had with SonicWALL and now moving over into the Dell environment. We're not going to be talking about the SonicWALL Dell transition at all on this call, since that is a recent happening, but I just want to get that clear. However, we are going to be talking about how CDP has a very unique value proposition that is different from most of the backup solutions that are on the market today, at least in the small and medium business space. And so Ken is going to take us through a discussion talking about the architecture, talking about the technology, how it is different, and I would encourage all of you to ask questions by typing in the attendee, typing in the question bar at the bottom, and I'll interject them as appropriate. So we're just going to have a discussion here for the next 45 minutes or so, and hopefully we can answer your questions and get some information out there about how CDP is different, how it's approaching the market differently. So with that, Ken from Dell SonicWALL, the product manager of CDP, please take it away.
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much, Nathan, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here this morning to talk to you about the Dell SonicWALL CDP data protection solution. Obviously, my name is, I'm the product line manager here at Dell SonicWALL. For this particular product line, I've been with the company for roughly about 4 years now. But I've been with the, I've been following the backup and disaster recovery industry in general, back in 2003 some time frame. So I've been around in this industry for a while. What's really keeping things very interesting, though, for me personally, over the past few years is the fact that, with this role at SonicWALL, now Dell, is that I get the benefit of spending a lot of my time collaborating and partnering with customers like yourself and with partners like Nathan, so that I can get a better understanding of the backup challenges that many of you are facing today, and then trying to learn what you're expecting to face in the next 2 or 3 years down the road, so that we understand how we develop our products to support your needs and requirement. So about 2 years ago, when we went down this journey, SonicWALL set out an aggressive goal to fundamentally basically reinvent our CDP solution when we first acquired the technology back in like 2007 or 2006. To be more transformational, to modernize this to meet the customer changing needs and the requirement around the data protection and disaster recovery situation. So this whole product that I'm going to be talking about today is completely redesigned from the ground up, of course. Just based on those collaborations with some peers like partners and customers, expressing to us what you're looking for in a backup and recovery product. So with that said, let's start with the agenda here. What we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about we're going to give you a product line overview. And we're going to talk a little bit how it really works underneath the underneath the hood. If we have I think we can go into a deep dive on this, of course. But I obviously want to go ahead and try to keep this conversation more interactive. Nathan interject some questions, stuff like that, to keep it a little bit more alive. When we see or hear something that you wanted me to clarify on, feel free to stop us and ask a question. I'll be happy to clarify. But before we start down on the ground of what this product is about, let's start with what we have found out from our collaboration, from our surveys and so forth. Like, what did we find out that customers are looking for and what they need and what their desire is in the product? So a customer survey that we conducted, and over the years that we talked to many customers, back in 2012, just to validate everything that we were learning about the industry and learning about our customer, was that customer, over 500 customers have actually collaborated and answered these responses from a questionnaire that we sent out, and the result from that survey revealed that many of our customers and many of the customers who are not our customer, basically in this case, were most concerned about when it comes to backup recovery implementation. And the first thing that come out very, very, very important to them, extremely important, or very important, was that they were not very confident about their backup. and they weren't they weren't confident that their backup would be recoverable after they implemented a backup solution. So many of these legacy or backup solutions that they have, such as tape-based or many of the legacy software out there, still leaving them unsure about their backup successes and unsure if their application, their files and folder will basically be able to restore. That was the main key thing. And then just total ease of use of it basically was also a very big concern. Being able to spend less time on doing backup, trying to find a better way to basically minimize their time, minimize their their staff time to basically doing backup and so forth. And then obviously, of course, recovery. Recovery is all about it's everything about backup, right? I mean, if a file can't be recovered, then the backup solution would be pretty much rendered useless, if you will. So recovery, easy recovery, fast recovery, having a granular level of recovery as well. So basically, if you can roll back, many different iterations of the changes in the data itself was also very important to them, and that's how they expressed this to us as well. And then the overall backup environment is growing so massively that it gets out of control. So as an IT admin or as a business owner, do you want to spend a lot of time basically buying more storage to store, aging data or storing data that's not even relevant to the business as well? So all those are big keys concerns in the product and in the environment or in the backup space today. So some of those things that we're going to be talking about today and how the product actually address some of those issues for you and address some of the key concerns about how to be able to be more efficient with the backup, being more less costly to actually implement a backup solution based on the architecture that we're using. So SonicWALL set out and provided a new approach to this backup and recovery, and this is what I'm going to be talking about a little bit more, because comparing us to many of the backup vendors out there today, what SonicWALL differentiate and where SonicWALL CDP differentiate is basically, rather than trying to piecemeal a lot of the solutions together to do exactly what you need, that include doing either backup, doing offsite, doing replication, if you need to archive the data, all that stuff around data protection and data preservation. SonicWALL approach to this was to basically bring all that together and integrated that. So from a perspective of the product itself, the Dell SonicWALL solution provides you obviously continuous backup. They also have application-aware snapshot. It provides replication and archiving capabilities. And what we also offer very uniquely is this new approach called the Unified Object-Based Architecture, which we will go through in more details later, explaining you why this is going to help and satisfy some of the requirement and some of the challenges that many of our customers are facing today. All this is unified, pretty much in a scalable, in a very flexible architecture to obviously, at the end of the day, essentially protect and ensure the preservation and the recoverability of not just your files, not just on your typical flat files or data, but also your application data as well as complete system for the mixed platform or mixed environment. Like we'll talk more about how we support Apple, Windows, and Linux in the environment. Where if you have a very distributed, very mixed platform environment, we will be able to support that. If you adopted a virtual server environment, we have good news there as well, because our upcoming release, which is basically due out in September some time frame, will have native support to backup and recover virtual machines as well, and that will come out as long as there's a support contract and so forth. That's something that you can easily roll up and upgrade without additional cost, if you will. Now, the CDP is delivered in various purpose-built appliance. And it comes in different form factor to basically, very easy. The main idea behind the appliance approach is to basically reduce the burden and the guesswork of implementing a backup and disaster recovery strategy for either your server, laptop, or desktop environment. And there, again, like I said, it can be running in a mixture of Windows, Apple, or Linux operating system. Now, there's also, when we talk to our customer, a lot of our customer expressed to us, if they had some if they understood what an appliance is. And I just want to make sure that I clarify this and spend just a little bit of time on explaining what basically is an appliance. In this case, an appliance, in a very short definition, is basically a production-ready, it's a disk-based, production-ready, a disaster recovery device that is completely integrated with, we have hardware, software, and the storage embedded into the appliance itself to to basically bring you the whole entire solution all enclosed in an all-inclusive appliance that allows you to basically deploy the unit very, very quickly without all the mixed component integration and so forth. So the appliance primary function is basically very simple. It is a backup server, and all the agents, all of the devices are connected to this appliance that you are targeting for backup. Its function is basically to receive and store the information, and then validate, and then check all the integrity, make sure that the stored data is always recoverable and always accessible at any time or in any places, if you will. So in this case, the SonicWALL CDP solution, you have a number of deployment choices here, range from a combination of appliance model that you see that will best fit the environment or the scale of your IT environment. So at the low end, at the entry level model, which is basically really ideal for small and remote branch offices, and sometimes even enterprise, with maybe a distributed large work group or even functional department within that, that require data protection for multiple workstations, for server, for backup footprint that may grow to roughly about 3 terabytes over time from where they currently are right now. And then there's also, obviously, there's also the higher end models that's ideal for more medium and larger organizations demanding either RAID protection, high capacity, more flexible disaster recovery for larger number of workstations and server, of course.
Ken, if I may interject here, Ken, sorry to interrupt here, but there's a question came in basically about, and I'm kind of curious. It's interesting. There's a lot of different software providers out there, and I think the appliance approach is one that is unique to SonicWALL, and there are other providers out there doing it, but they're usually integrating a third-party software. They're not building everything from the ground up. So, can you just hit on? And I'm less concerned about the as you get up, you just get more resources and more capacity. I know that the firmware is essentially the same across all of the units, but as far as the SonicWALL's simplicity approach of being able to, that way the IT administrator or the business owner doesn't have to figure out the hardware that the software can run on, or figure out they don't have to figure out all the different various pieces, because SonicWALL's put it all together in a package for them.
That is correct. Just to expand on that, the SonicWALL solution is, it's it's all built from the ground up, and it's all proprietary technology within SonicWALL and from within Dell SonicWALL, and it's a lockdown operating system where you're not going to be exposed to typical software vendor who uses a Windows-based platform that may be exposed to different types of threats that could cause problems for our customers. But with the Linux based architecture and it's self-enclosed and it's locked down, and all the whole entire solution is basically is less vulnerable to that type of stuff. And when it's deployed in an appliance, it's totally completely already been vetted out within SonicWALL at Dell, within our factory. So when you ship the product, it's fully production ready. So all you have to do is basically put it on the network, install agents on there, and once the agent sits on the network and connected to the CDP appliance, then you automatically have a solution that basically can be deployed in less than 30 minutes. Without a whole lot of integration and configuration, if you will, for either replication, for either backup, for either archiving, for either just setting up the whole policy-based thing to get your whole environment back up in a very, very quick manner, if you will. I hope that answered your question, Nate.
Yeah, great. We can go ahead and move on. I just, just a unique approach. I want to make sure we hit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to move on here, basically from a platform and application support perspective, the CDP deliver, pretty much the ability for you to flexibly grow your business by adding more clients and adding more platform and application with with much simplicity. The CDP protects 3 different key data types, if you will. If you look at from this place, from a user and server data that are residing on these different type of platforms, running either a mixture of Windows, Apple, or Linux, the SonicWALL CDP solution have native support for all of these different platforms that you have. So if you have a mixed environment, we will be able to cover all that for you. They also have intrinsic support for most popular business applications such as Exchange, SharePoint, Active Directory, and Small Business Service you see here on the slide. And then, but it doesn't even stop there. Based on, in the event of a, we don't just protect the data, but we also protect the system as well. So in the case of a hardware disaster, the CDP solution protects systems using our own branded Universal System Restore software with BMR or bare metal recovery technology to basically minimize your system downtime by enabling you to quickly recover a complete Windows server to either your identical hardware or even dissimilar hardware, or even a virtual machine if you have a virtual environment as well, to basically resume your mission-critical services such as receiving or sending emails, if you will. So key takeaway from the slide, user server data, application data, as well as system. So all these three needs to be all these recoverable and quickly recoverable to keep your business continuity plan up and running very, very quickly. So with that said, I mean, out-of-the-box licensing, all this, today, the box comes comes very uniquely bundled with all of the different licensing that that we have to protect your laptop, desktop, and server, and all the different applications right out of the box for a very typical environment. If you need additional licensing for that, it will be on a per license basis. We make it very, very simple compared to most of our competitors who are more component or very specific, platform specific. It's a single SKU here basically that allows you to basically add and expand your environment with a single SKU if you want to protect your server or you want to protect your laptop or desktop, if you will. And you can see the pricing from an Enterprise S4P perspective is very, very competitive in the marketplace. I think compared to to most of our competitors like Symantec and most of the software vendors out there, you can see the pricing is very, very aggressive in this place. So really at this point, that's kind of a high-level product overview of what the product does and what it comes when it comes out of the box. But really, how does it really work so that from a perspective of a business owner and how it protects your business? So I'm going to go through this next several slides very, very quickly because what it does is it gives you kind of an architectural overview of how the CDP works. So as you can see here, the environment itself, it's a typical environment here. You got a corporate headquarter. You can have 1 up to 5 server depending on the size. You have laptop and desktop at the local offices. You may even have users that are traveling or remote office that are VPNing into the network to collect services like email, if you will. Or you may have even a remote site somewhere or branch offices that may have a local server and then local users there as well. So how the CDP works here is basically you have a CDP appliance that sits on the corporate network. And the first thing you do is you get that, there's a couple of IP addresses that you need to change using a management console. It could be a laptop or a server, if you will. And you actually connect to the appliance and change that IP address to basically get it to be seen on your network. So that way, all the machines that are on the LAN, local LAN network, can be able to see the CDP and connect to it, and then start backing up to that device. So once the agent is installed, the agent itself sits on every single machine. It's a very lightweight, piece of software. It has the UI component, and it also has a service component that basically sits at the low level to basically monitor your file system and collect those changes and back up those changes. So the agent basically captures, compares, and it compares it against the previous version, and then basically back them up and store them onto CDP Appliance, if you will, automatically, based on the policy that you set. So the policy is something we're going to be talking a little bit later, but it's essentially a set of rules and commands that basically get pushed out to those agents centrally from an IT admin perspective, and then it backs up automatically without any end user requirement of having to basically set up their own backup. All that is done centrally through a very central policy. And based on the policy itself, the appliance itself store n versions of the actual data itself. So it monitors as well and it reports on all the backup. It alerts you on any backup activities, whether it's a success or failed. But the nice thing about this is that actually also encrypts the data and replicate that version of data onto an offsite location for disaster recovery in this case. Then you have bare metal recovery software, which we already talked about, being able to protect your system, not just your data. So from a recovery perspective, very simple. You know, a user with admin admin permission. So as a business owner or as an IT admin, if you want to grant users the permission to restore their own information without IT intervention or without having to call up an IT help desk to say, hey, you know what, I lost my file because I accidentally deleted or I accidentally, so something happened in my machine, the file got corrupted, I couldn't get it, so I need that file back. In this case, the admin can grant permission to the end user to basically go in and connect to the appliance and only have access to their own data and restore that information directly back to their machine without IT intervention. So that helps basically increase IT productivity, increase user productivity in that case, and taking all of that IT support cost out of the equation, if you will. And then obviously,
I have a question on that. Sorry to interject, but going back to that point 4 there.
Yep.
A lot of the customers that I work with, the challenge, I mean, most of the backups focus on server-side backups, right? So that they are, and every pretty much backup on the market that I've seen does a great job of handling, you know, backing up your servers. However, the problem that I've seen, and it's continually becoming a greater and greater risk, is as the workforce is more and more mobile, more people with laptops, more people working from home, more people working, you know, from hotel rooms or traveling, et cetera, that the reality is that people do save files on their laptops. And I don't know of many single solutions that can combine the ability to back up laptops as well as the servers in a single solution and give that flexibility. So can you talk a little bit about how it effectively works, especially when you're a VPN user, so you know, making sure that how that VPN works, or how the backup actually works, or when it works, and how that impacts the end user, because I think the experience of the end user in being able to back up their own files and retrieve their own files is a very unique proposition, not only for business owners to sleep well at night knowing their data is backed up, but as well as for IT administrators because of the headache that takes off their plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the problem at hand. I mean, if you look at today's environment where data is being consumed as well as being created by user of the company, I think it's really clear to us, basically based on a number of different surveys out there today, that the threat of losing data at the endpoint, which is laptop and desktop, is increasing. And you know, you got CIOs and you have business owners out there who are very concerned. The minute that a person or a user creates that information in anyone's mind basically belongs to the company. And you want to be able to basically make copies or have access to that information in the event that it gets lost, or if it's intentionally gets deleted, whatever it may be. So in essence, the problem and the issue here is that information that are generated on the endpoint is becoming increasingly important because of either regulatory or compliance purposes. They have presentation, they have quotes, they have a lot of business dealings that are being worked through those devices itself. Now, everyone thinks that a lot of information, if you're protecting the data center, that should be enough. Protecting the application itself, the emails, the SQL databases and stuff like that is adequate enough to protect the business to keep it running and up and running. But essentially, that a lot of surveys out there suggest that over 60%, and this is actually a survey from a company called IDC, which is very popular in the analyst space, revealed that over 60% of corporate information reside at the endpoint on laptop, desktop of user that actually are very critical and vital to the company. So the CDP understands that, and the SonicWALL understand how important it is to basically protect that information. Now, the other issue is basically, if you look at Microsoft's recent study, and I think it was back a few years ago, which is still relevant today, that recovery of information is not necessary or databases and application. over 97%. It's incredibly high. 90% of what they predicted for that require recovery of files is basically for a single file that user either user deletes it or user error somewhere that or maliciously delete the information or what have you basically. But over 97% of that information is being restored based on a single file. So if you imagine all the support desks, support calls and email that go to the IT organization to help a person restore a single file from tape, would be very, very, very unproductive and very, very costly, if you will. And the way that CDP works in this case is that, like I said, the agent sits on those each individual client machine. That agent basically, now from a user perspective, there is no requirement from the user to basically having to go into a UI somewhere to basically select certain files to be backed up. As a business owner and as an IT administrator, I mean, basically they're responsible for basically safeguarding that information, regardless of how the end user is asked to basically help with that situation. So this is why SonicWALL provides this called unified policy-based, policy-driven type architecture, where a policy that is derived or defined by an IT admin that selects, basically say, I want you to protect your information regardless of how you like it or not. The agent acquire that policy based on a set of commands and rules. It automatically monitors that machine and backs it up automatically once it's logged into the network. So even a VPN user who are traveling, once they're on an airplane or once they're on an airport waiting to get on an airplane and they VPN into the network, guess what? The agent automatically kicks on. The service behind that actually processes the information in the background, connects to the CDP appliance automatically, and start replicating and start copying and backing up any changed data directly from that laptop onto the CDP appliance. So what that means is they're not backing up the whole entire data, if you will. So if you're already backing up that information the first time, it's only going to back up the incremental changes to that and keeps it at a revision. So basically every revision is an incremental basically changes that a user creates or made to that particular file or particular information, if you will. All right?
Great, yeah, thank you.
Hope that answers your question. Anyway, to keep moving on point 5 here. So once that information is backed up to the local appliance, that based on a set of rules and policy that the admin sets, what information gets replicated onto the offsite location. So not all information has equal importance. So from a user or from an IT or from a business owner perspective, you want to be able to select certain information that you want to replicate off-site for disaster recovery or for even long-term retention policy, if you will. So that information is replicated automatically based on a set of rules that you want onto either a SonicWALL Dell SonicWALL offsite service location or to your own location should you have a secondary location that you can serve as a disaster recovery for your environment. All right. Obviously, all the data that gets out of that local appliance is all encrypted, and so you won't be able to be compromised by someone sniffing when it's in transit. The data is also stored at rest on the CDP appliance. So essentially, if you store it at the Dell SonicWALL offsite data server, SonicWALL would not even have access to that information without that encryption key. So the encryption key is very important in this case to get access to the information that you sent to the offsite location. The third option there basically allows you to basically offload that information from the local appliance onto a USB device. So this is a third level of protection, if you will, or if you want to deploy a multi-level disaster recovery protection, is that you want to make copies of the data onto a USB device, physically transport that to an archive vault somewhere that allows you to basically keep it for long-term retention, or in the event of a really dramatic disaster where the whole entire area where both your remote offices and your corporate office is being compromised. That way you still have a third option to basically restore from. All right. So in this case, what I just talked about is going through some hardware disaster scenario. If the CDP appliance for some reason is compromised and you have unable to access that information, obviously you would be able to basically take that another CDP device on there and restore all the SonicWALL information from the offsite location back into and reconstitute that information onto that appliance. Now, if a hardware disaster like your Exchange server goes down, you either fix that machine or you replace that machine with a new server. that failed server can be quickly restored using our universal system recovery with bare metal recovery software tool that we talked a little bit about earlier, where you can boot up the system and then restore the whole entire image on that machine and get it up and running very, very quickly. Once you get that system up and quickly, you restore the information from the CDP appliance back into that system and get you up and running very, very quickly. Now, we talked a little bit about if there was a site-wide disaster where the corporate headquarters is completely wiped out and you need to basically restore the whole entire site. Obviously, the first thing you need to do is basically restore all of your system by using bare metal recovery software to get that up and running for every single system. Laptop, desktop, server, doesn't matter what it is. We support all that Windows platform. Once all that is restored, obviously you have a lot of data that you want to restore to those devices. So the difference between SonicWALL and many of the online backup vendors out there today is that you have to restore that information to the cloud, which you have a massive amount of information that you need to travel through the internet. With SonicWALL, you have the option to basically take that archive CDP archive and physically transport that back into the environment and physically restore the information through that USB device and connect it to the system. Sorry, let me go back a little bit, okay? That will be the fastest way that you can get a large amount of data. Now, in the event that you have maybe smaller files that you need quickly to restore from, you can certainly do that as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. In this case, your second option here basically from that is to be able to, if the whole site is down, you can get a new CDP appliance. SonicWALL will ship you, if you're under support contract, a new device. You get it on the system. You get it on the network the same way you did before. Then through that device, you can have at the agent at every single device, like an Exchange server or even a laptop, desktop. You now have access to the information located on the offsite location and restore very, very critical piece of information that you need up and running very, very quickly without having to wait for the whole entire device to be restored. Okay. Now, the third option here basically is obviously you want to, if you have time as you are bringing up your environment, you're reconstituting the device onto the CDP appliance, and then from there you can restore back to your device as well. You can certainly do that. So all these options are available to you. And the third option, the fourth option is basically having an agent directly connect to the offsite location and restore individual files from there as well, just similar to what you would do with an online backup vendor. Now, this option right now is actually going to be available in the next upcoming release that we're going to have in September. This is something that currently in alpha and beta today. So this is one of the fourth option that you will have, but not exactly today, but you're going to have it in the next few months. So with that said, that's the overarching overview of the CDP appliance. So I want to go ahead and stop right here because I've been talking a lot here. If you will, if there's any questions or if you want to about how it works, and I'll be happy to answer any questions here. Okay. Any question, Nathan?
Yes, Ken. Sorry, thank you for taking a pause. I accidentally had you on mute there to make sure that I didn't interrupt your presentation. You know, the summary of those last several slides, basically, I mean, to me, it's amazing how many different ways in which you can not only back up the data, but the recoverability options, right? You know, one of the components that we try and talk about to our customers is, you know, what are the realities around transferring data to either offsite facilities or recovering information from offsite facilities. So, you know, can you talk a little bit about that, just briefly? I don't want a long explanation because I know we've got some other content we want to get to. But you know, in the event of, gosh, a site going down, right? Maybe they've got to replace their equipment. I'm not worried about all that, but we got to get them a new CDP and we need to get their data. What's the process, or what do you typically set expectations or best practice recommendations with regard to setting up that architecture to be able to recover as quick as possible in the event of a site?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. I mean, like I said, I mean, if you look at the last few slides that we went through, how you would be able to deploy a multi-level type disaster recovery scenario, where if in the event that either your site is compromised or you have large amount of data that's been compromised, like hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes worth of data that's been compromised. A typical Exchange server or a SQL server could range between 40 to 100 gigabytes today, and some can range all the way up to a terabyte. So obviously, you don't want to be able to send that much data through the internet and recover it through the internet. So our best practice is basically use the technology that we currently have and maximize your protection and recovery capabilities based on the technology that's provided. So you have an offsite site-to-site capability where you replicate data from one device to another device located in another location. But we always recommend that use the local archiving capability where you can offload, the latest version of that information onto a USB device that you can physically transport very, very quickly from one location to the next. Within less than 24-hour period to get your information back up and running very, very quickly. So even if you have a very high-speed internet connection, restoring hundreds of gigabytes worth of data is going to take you more than a day. So essentially, if you have this multiple approach to disaster recovery and all the tools that we provided within the solution, it gives you multiple types of recovery options based on the recovery time objective that you currently have. So if you need it within a 4-hour period, if you need it within a 24-hour period, within an hour period, doesn't matter what it is, you have the information readily available to you in that case. All right?
Perfect.
Now,
yeah, thank you.
All right. So in this case, I mean, I don't want to go too much detail or too technical here, but the way that works, we already just talked about here. But as you can see, the whole entire system, in this case, the whole environment, the backup environment, is governed or is controlled by the CDP Web UI. This is kind of snapshot of what you see here. You got all the system setting, and you got all of the different menu here item that helps you control the whole entire backup environment. The web use management interface is where you control the whole entire backup operation and streamline that backup policy and control. So it manages all and configure all admin level policy. What this is basically, it helps you do three things. It helps you define the type of data or what you want to back up, when you want to back up, and how often you want to back it up, and what type of backup you do. Do you want to replicate? Do you want to do continuous backup? Do you want to replicate? Do you want to do snapshotting? Do you want to archive? All that gets controlled centrally through this Web UI. So it governs all that policy. It also governs agent level policy. What that means is that the same types of policy, the same type of mechanics to define how a backup should be run is also available at the agent level. But even though if you, through admin level, the admin can grant user some flexibility to do their own backup, but at the end of the day, the admin is going to have full access and full control over what the user is doing with the backup itself. So if they're doing something that that the business owner or if an admin doesn't like, they can actually go in and tweak that policy to make it right, if you will. All these policies are being done at.
Yeah, just wanted to interject really quick. Yeah, just because because this is for two reasons. One, we've got about 5 minutes left of the presentation. I know there's plenty of other content to get to, but I think what you're talking about here is actually extremely powerful. This is, at the beginning, you mentioned that there's some simplicity, and you can get the CDP, you can take the CDP out of the box, plug it in, and probably within a half an hour, you could be, or less, you could actually be creating your first backups. However, as you want to get more granular control, that a lot of other backup solutions don't give you this power that you're talking about as far as the granular policy control. I mean, this will take you longer to set up just because you want to try and define all the different subsets of the data that you have, whether it's accounting data, ERP data, application data, et cetera. But the point is that this ability to manage that policy, not only granting end users permissions to restore their own data and what kind of data will be backed up on laptops for traveling and remote VPN users, as well as different applications for Active Directory or Exchange or your CRM data. I mean, this right here, it's a unique combination of the simplicity that you can get a CDP up and running in less than half an hour, but yet the power of the granular control of, to be able to help manage that. And I guess this is definitely a point I want to hit home. So if you can spend the next few minutes, just 5 minutes, digging into really some of the key features that you feel that this really gives you that's uniquely identified on the CDP. I think that's how I'd like to wrap up the presentation, because I want to make sure that we leave leave the attendees with that content.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and speed up here real quick. Like I said, I mean, but what Nathan is talking about is basically this right here, is that the policy object architecture is governed by these different types of policy or different types of object. Think of object as building blocks. And building block mean that you can be very, very simplistic in a way where you can want to just back up everything without having to have the headaches of going in there and create policy that is so flexible, so sophisticated in a way that you want to govern that data. You want to just basically say, hey, you know what, I just want to back up everything. Those policies, you can be as simplistic as you want, you can be as complex as you want. But the nice thing behind this is that they're all building blocks. The building block is that you define what you want to back up, when you want to back up, and how you want to back it up. The data rule is very, very simple. Like I said, I mean, you can be as granular as defining, the type of data you want to back up and execute those backup based on a hierarchical order of where you want to back up, JPEGs, movies, or you want to just back up doc files and very important key files within your environment. You can extract, you can include and exclude those type of information very, very quickly to these policy. Scheduling, you have many different options of scheduling, you can schedule as many intervals as you like, and maybe all back up that same data set. The backup rule is where it's very, very special, where you have a selection of either creating a CDP backup or a snapshot backup. You also have the ability to create a policy to keep the number of revisions that you want to keep on based on a policy. You want to keep 15 revisions for not so important information, and you want to keep revisions. You keep all revision throughout this life cycle of that data, so that way you're always going to have all the iteration of that information, and you can keep those revisions as long as you like as well. And then you can also create trimming technology that basically trim those revisions automatically as well, and then you set up offsite rule. All that policy are all building blocks that you create. Once those building blocks is created, it gets put into what we call an admin level policy that gets pushed out to agent. Once that agent acquires that admin policy, that's it. Automatically backs up that information based on that set of rules and policy. And the way that it works is, and that's what I mean by going down to what we call control, enforcement, and automation. That's where we differentiate our solution based on any other solution out there in the marketplace. Okay. Here's just a quick snapshot, but I want to go back into how we handle the data itself. Here's just some other slide that go through how you actually define these policies. Defining the right admin, you can create quotas, you can create global permissions, how you want to govern that whole entire backup process based on a set of rules and commands, like I said earlier. You have administrative agent override, where you can allow user permissions to do certain things, but administrator always have overriding capability of offsetting everything that the user does. All right. So this whole so the way that the CDP also very uniquely set up is the way that it handles the data. So if you look at this particular slide here, the way that the data is handled is that once you back up the information, it always back up a full backup. And then it actually does its own deduplication technology to go through and identify all the change information, and then taking that information and replicating it, compress it, dedupe it, and store it into the CDP appliance as a file set footprint. That file set is very unique in a way where all the blocks that belongs to every single revision that you stored is going to be recovered from. It gives you that granular level of recovery based on your recovery point objective, how often you need to roll back a particular revision. You can be continuous, or you can be every 15 minutes, how you want to set up the policy. What this does is it gives you a faster backup because you're sending less data. It uses less bandwidth over the internet because you're sending less data. And then it gives you fast, reliable version recovery, because now the recovery is based on how we assemble these blocks, and each of these blocks is always validated. The key thing behind our solution versus everyone else is that it's a validated backup. So at the end of the day, we validate the data, every single block, making sure that each block is recoverable, accessible, making sure that all your information is recoverable in that case. So it's a validated backup, and with the deduplication, you will be able to store more data with less storage, if you will, in this case. And it does the same thing with files, whether it's application or file. It does the same process applies, if you will. And with that said, you know, I don't want to go through the technical piece here, but how it does the duplication process and so forth. But to just wrap this thing up, I mean, there are 4 key differentiations that I hope you can take away from this presentation today. Is that this unique CDP object-based policy-driven approach, you know, gives you that unmatched level of automation and control that allows you to run backup continuously, and it runs it very intelligently based on these rules as well, to ensure that your information is always recoverable. And it gives you multiple choices of disaster recovery as well. And the flexibility behind this solution, it protects server, laptop, desktop, regardless of where it is, based on a mixture of different platforms, Windows, Apples, and Linux. So as you know, MacBooks and Apples and machines and laptops are becoming more and more prevalent in the industry today. So you have a lot of users, especially with SonicWALL, right? That's what we have a lot of our executives and a lot of people here are using Mac nowadays. So we definitely want to make sure that we cover all of the different types of fixed platform within the environment that you have. And obviously, you got the choice of disaster recovery. There's 4 different choices. You know, you got the site-to-site, you got the off-site, you have the universal bare metal recovery software that protects the system, and you have local archive, which allows you to archive that data. And to just basically, from an efficiency perspective, you got data duplication and compression that allows you to store more data with less storage. And then, the last but not least, the ease of use of this whole entire solution, if you will. You know, unlike traditional point-level solution that basically involve multiple complex integration and configuration, SonicWALL is delivered to you as a production-ready device that basically takes away all the guesswork in data protection for you, and it automates the whole entire backup process for you. And the whole entire management console allows you to do that through a central web console. And file recovery as well, you got, like I said, from a user perspective, you have a very simple UI. If you know how to use Windows and navigate through the file browser, the same way it applies here with SonicWALL. You got a UI that you can go into My Backup and say, here's all my files that I just backed up. Point and click with a single point restore, you get your versions back the way that you wanted before. So to wrap that up, I mean, that's as simple as you can get from this from the solution that we provide. All right?
Well, Ken, yeah, I would say thank you for presenting this. I agree that, as was put out in the invitation, the bullet points that we discussed, is that one of the things that there's several things that the CDP has going for it that other solutions don't. It has multiple platform support. You can do Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. The fact that because of some of the self-administration, the automation, and the ability for end users to restore their own data if the IT administrators so choose, we can actually save time. The fact that there's some built-in high-level technologies with deduplication to reduce backup storage requirements as well as the off-site storage requirements, because that has some real cost impacts, as well as being able to use, you don't have to spend as much money on your internet connections, and the fact that you can have all these revisions based on a policy that's completely automated based on the level of granularity you want to set. So CDP is a very powerful tool. It can be as simple as you want it, but it has the power and the flexibility to make it to be as granular as you need it to be to align with your backup and disaster recovery requirements. So with that said, I'm going to end the presentation. If there's any questions that came through, I'll make sure to get those answered after the fact and follow up with everyone individually to make sure you have all your questions answered. But I do want to thank Ken Dang from SonicWALL, the product line manager of CDP, for taking his time and spending it with us today. Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thanks so much, Nathan, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Have everyone. Bye.